Let's talk about my wishlist for Stories 3. This Monster Hunter spin-off series is great overall. I cannot recommend this enough, especially because the games are on sale, guys. Like, seriously, go buy those games. They're a real good time. I personally believe that Monster Hunter Stories 2 is an overall improvement in the series, especially, you know, when you compare it to the remaster. I think that there's overall improvements and a much better experience, which is to be expected from a sequel. But there are things that the predecessor does better than the sequel, and I'm gonna talk about all of that in a few different topics to see if we can get the best of both worlds in Monster Hunter Stories 3. By the way, this video will not contain spoilers about Stories 1 or 2, because I know that a lot of people are getting into the franchise now with the sale going on. Actually, there will be one spoiler towards the end of the video, but I'll let you know before I actually talk about it, so don't worry. This first topic has kind of already been addressed, but I also believe it to be the main problem that puts people off from playing Stories. We're talking about tone maturity. Let me explain. What I mean by this is that a lot of people, including myself, look at Stories and think that it's just Monster Hunter for kids. It looks a little, you know, it looks too cartoonish, it looks too simplified, it looks too kiddish. And this is kind of true, because when the devs made the first game, they actually said that they wanted to make Monster Hunter more approachable to a wider audience. However, when you put the maturity tone of these three games side by side, even though 3 isn't out yet, it is clear that the third game is becoming a little bit more adult. In the first one, you play as a little twerp. In the second one, you're a teenager, aka Satan. And in the third game, it seems like you're playing as a young adult. Finally, we are above the age of 18, thank God. Maybe I'll even end up making a Monster Hunter Stories 3 waifu video, because you guys wanted me to do that about the first two games, but they were kids and I'm not fucking going there. The team has even said that this time around they're gonna introduce morally complex characters, and judging from the nature of, you know, the civil war going on in this game, there's gonna be some good stuff in there. Also, we're finally gonna get a voiced protagonist. Thank the Lord above. I could no longer deal with people talking to you and you're just standing there like,
why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Now let's talk about the good stuff, the monsters and the monsties. I gotta say this right away. Guys, make every monster into a monstie. Don't blue ball me with Duramboros like you did in Stories 2 again. For those of you who don't know the difference between a monster and a monstie, the monster is the guy that you're fighting, the monstie is the guy that you're fighting with. It's part of your team. Although the name Monsties, you know, deriving from Monster Bestie is kind of cringe, these guys are actually really cool. You mean you can swim on the back of Olagiacris, you can fly on top of Olegiana. It's fucking peak. They're awesome. What isn't awesome is the fact that some of the monsters in these games cannot be turned into monsties, meaning that there's someone that you can beat up, but they're not really someone you can have on your team. I don't really know why this is a thing, but I'm praying that this is not gonna return in Monster Hunter Stories 3, because Duramboros fans are still recovering from Stories 2. And I think this is especially the case because we got confirmation that Magnamalo is gonna be a monstie, which also opens up the door for potential wild monsters. Like, bro, if Ray Dow ends up being in that game and I can't use him to fly around, I am going to be furious. Also, just a side note, but don't be afraid of bringing frontier monsters into the mix. I mean, people liked Espinos and Sunbreak, and there's a lot better monsters in that roster of frontier, so there's a lot of potential here. Now let's talk weapons, and it's an interesting topic because Stories isn't like the regular Monster Hunter games where we have all 14 weapons. In fact, the first Monster Hunter Stories only had 4, being the Great Sword, the Hammer, the Sword and Shield, and the Hunting Horn, I believe. And then Stories 2 added the Bow and the Gun Lance. This was to add a new category of damage, as Sword and Shield and Great Sword deal slash damage, Hammer and Hunting Horn deal blunt damage, and then Gun Lance and Bow were dealing piercing damage. Weapons in the Stories series work differently from the mainline series. You're not using them to do the traditional hunting stuff. I mean, we're talking about a turn-based game here, so the way to compensate for, you know, having less weapons is to make them more interesting. Like with Greatsword, you can't just pick an option that says TCS and spam that until the monster dies. No, you gotta work your way up to the TCS with different moves and stuff. I'm saying this because while I do want all 14 weapons to be in the game, I understand that that's not really possible. I think Stories 3 is gonna follow its predecessor trend and add 2 new weapons into the roster. I feel like a really cool weapon to add would be the Charge Blade or the Switch Axe, but then I also would love to see the Heavy Bowgun because light and heavy bowgun aren't a thing, you just have the bow. I'd love love to see like what kind of ammo mechanics they would implement into light bowgun or heavy bowgun, and like the guard point mechanics they could implement into the charge blade, especially given how Clair Obscur has now shown that turn-based games can have more dynamic combat. But realistically, I think we're going to be getting longsword, because it's a fucking miracle that this weapon hadn't been implemented here yet. And I don't know, after the longsword, they can add some weird shit like the insect glaive. I mean, usually when you're playing the game, you have more than one weapon equipped anyway, because different weapons are able to target and do different types of damage, just like in the mainline series, but except this time around, it's like pretty heavily emphasized. Like, bro, when I was playing Stories 2, I always had a greatsword, a hammer, and a gun lance, because at some point, you're gonna come across a fight where you need all types of damage to take advantage of all your turns. And if you don't, brother, you are fucked. Regardless, even with the longsword jokes out of the way, I'm pretty content with just 2 weapons being added, as the combat system is pretty diverse as it is. But if they want to prove me wrong and add even more weapons, I ain't gonna complain about that. Next up, we're gonna be talking the Rite of Channeling. This is a system that is present in both games. Don't worry if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna explain. I'm gonna keep it real simple, because if you reach this far into the video, you've probably played Stories, you know exactly what this is, but in case you haven't, this little bingo looking menu is essentially your skills, and if you lined up the same type of skills, you basically empower them. Like if you give your Monstie 3 fire skills and you do 1 row, be it vertically, horizontally, or diagonally, you will improve their stats. And in the first game, depending on what kind of skills you slotted into what monster, you would actually make them look different. Like you could get this fire Lagombi and a bunch of other crazy shit. The main problem with the first iteration of the system in the first game was that 1, you couldn't use all of the slots in the little bingo card system, and 2, this was pretty much an exclusive thing to the post-story content. And the second game actually fixed it. You could engage with the system really early on, and it was very easy to get the grip of, and you could actually make some really schwacky builds. The only thing that this second title didn't fix was the fact that we could no longer change the appearance of the monster. I honestly can't really wrap my head around as to why they removed it. It's a really cool thing that is unique to Stories, and the second game fixed, like I said, all of the gameplay issues, so the fact that they removed the aesthetic changes was just a bad move in my opinion. I don't know if the team got complaints over these aesthetic changes, but I personally feel like they're awesome, and you know, if you put the gameplay combinations of Stories 2 with the visual changes of Stories 1, I think that's a pretty dope Rite of Channeling system. So team, please consider bringing this back, because it's a cool system, and you know, you could even develop it to make it look even crazier. And finally, I have the last thing I want to talk about, which is probably going to be either the worst or the best part of the video, depending on how you look at it. This is where I issue the spoiler warning, because I'm going to be talking about the final bosses for Stories 1 and Stories 2, so click off the video, play the games, maybe come back to this video after you've beaten both of them, or you just don't care, that's fine. I'll talk about it now. This is last warning. Get the fuck out of here. Enough with the one-time final boss fights. It is criminal that you guys made Altura and that it has no gear and that I can only fight it once per run unless I save scum. Guys, what was going through your head? You made this beautiful work of art, but then you said, no, you can only enjoy it once. Beatrice, whatever, he's like a very fabulous Teostra. I wasn't really infatuated by the design. I thought it was cool, but meh. But Altura is like one of my top 5 monsters of all time. This monster's beautiful, and when you look at art that fans made for this monster, it just makes you that much more upset that we didn't get it. In fact, even Wilds kind of had this issue, because Zoshia can only be fought in low rank once, and then you beat the story, and then you can fight it again, and then we got the monster in the title update 1, which is an entire separate issue that I've talked about it multiple times. This is Monster Hunter, where the core gameplay is taking on bosses again and again and again. You guys made such amazing art with Altura. Like, I have an entire video on that. I'm not gonna waste too much time talking about it, because I've already done so before, so if you want to see the whole Altura rant, there's gonna be a link in the description. I just think it's such a weird decision to have in any Monster Hunter game, mainline or spin-off. I don't think it benefits anyone. I don't think that using a narrative, like, reasoning makes sense. Oh, because there was only one Zoshia. Dude, if that's the reason, then we won't be fighting most monsters again, ever. Like, a quest shows up because one particular monster turned up. You know that if we get rid of that monster, technically speaking, we wouldn't really have to fight it again. Make sure that the final boss can be fought more than once. Maybe make it an optional quest or something. Make sure to give it gear. I don't really care if you guys don't turn it into a Monstie. I can excuse that. But the rest, You guys gotta change it. It's not fun. And these were all the core changes that I think need to come into Monster Hunter Stories 3. I'm already super hyped for this game. I know that from Stories 1 to 2, I've seen so much progress. I cannot wait to get my hands on Stories 3. I think it will be an amazing game. Let me know how you feel about the changes that I've mentioned in this video. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. It's free. You can always undo it later on if you find that I'm not the creator for you. But that's all I got for you this time around. Y'all know the drill. Stay safe, and until we meet again.